The hardest goodbyes are the ones that never get said out loud, only felt in silence. I never thought I'd carry a story inside me that I'd be too afraid to tell, not because it's too dark or too painful, but because it never really ended. It just paused somewhere between hope and heartbreak, and I learned to live around it. The people in my life see me smile, talk, joke like nothing ever happened. But inside, there's a quiet version of me who still remembers. And no matter how far I run or how much time passes, I always find myself returning to that one chapter one never got to finish. Her name was Anya. I first met her on a slow September afternoon. The sky was gray, and the rain was soft, like it didn't really want to fall, but had no choice. I was standing under a small bus shelter, waiting for the rain to slow down so I could walk back home. And then she walked in, hurried, holding a tiny book over her head, her hair slightly wet, her cheeks red from the wind. She looked like someone who didn't belong to the noise of the world. Like she had just walked out of a quiet dream and stumbled into this messy reality. She glanced at me, smiled, and said, "Looks like the rain's not going anywhere." I don't know why, but I replied, "Maybe it just wants us to stay still for a while." She laughed. It was the kind of laugh that makes you forget everything else. Light, real, and full of warmth. And in that moment, something shifted in me. Something small but deep, like the first page of a story quietly turning without you realizing it. We started meeting often after that. She lived just 2 blocks away from me. I came to know that she was studying literature, and she loved collecting quotes from old books. She even carried a little notebook with her everywhere, filled with sentences that had touched her heart. One day, she read me a line that I can still hear in her voice. Some people arrive and make such a beautiful impact on your life, you can barely remember what life was like before them. And that's exactly what she became for me, a beautiful presence that slipped so quietly into my world, it felt like she had always been there. Our conversations were easy. We didn't talk about big things. We talked about tea flavors, old music, the smell of rain, why some people fear silence. We spent hours sitting in the park near my house. She'd bring her books, I'd bring some snacks, and we'd sit on the same bench under the big gomohur tree. I would listen more than talk. Her words always carried stories, and I was just happy to be the listener. Some days, I'd walk her back home. We'd talk about nothing and everything. Sometimes our hands would brush while walking, and I'd pretend I didn't notice, even though my whole body would light up inside. She had this habit of turning her head slightly when she laughed. She'd hold her breath before speaking about something she really cared about. She bit her lower lip when she was nervous, and she always blinked twice when she was surprised. I noticed everything. And I mean everything. But I never told her how I felt. I thought I didn't need to. I thought love, if it's real, is something people just know. I assumed she could see it in my eyes, hear it in the way I said her name, feel it in the way I listened to her even when she wasn't saying anything. And then one evening, my brother Raj came home. He was back from Singapore after 5 years of working abroad. Raj was always the golden boy. Taller than me, smarter, more confident. When he entered a room, people noticed. When he spoke, people listened. He was warm, funny, and had this natural charm that made others lean in without even realizing it. I was happy to have him home. We hadn't spent much time together in the last few years. But somewhere deep inside, a quiet fear crept in. I didn't know why. Maybe it was because I knew how easily people liked him. Maybe it was because for the first time, I didn't want anyone else to take up space in a world that I had slowly built around Anya. The first time Anya met Raj was casual. I had invited her for dinner, and Raj happened to be home. She was polite, friendly, the way she always was. But something shifted after that. I noticed it in the way her voice became a little softer when she spoke to him, in the way she smiled when he joked, in the way she looked at him just a second longer than necessary. At first, I told myself I was overthinking, that I was being insecure, that love isn't a race, and even if it were, I had a head start. But over the next few weeks, I saw it all unfold, and I couldn't stop it. Raj and Anya started meeting more often. Sometimes I was with them, sometimes not. They'd laugh at things I didn't find funny. They'd talk about topics I didn't know much about. They had a rhythm, fast, witty, effortless, and I felt like I was watching a dance I never learned the steps to. One day, Raj said something that shattered me without him realizing it. We were sitting on the terrace, just the two of us. He was sipping coffee and looking at the sky, and then he said, "You know that girl, Anya? She's really something. I think I might like her." He smiled after saying it. Just a normal, happy smile. And I froze. My lips wanted to say, "She's mine." My heart wanted to scream, "Don't." But my voice simply said, "Oh." That's all. Just oh. What do you do when your whole world starts slipping away one word at a time? When the person you love begins to laugh in someone else's arms, and the worst part is, they don't even know what they're doing to you? I didn't tell Raj how I felt. I didn't tell Anya either. I just stood there quietly as their story began, while mine slowly ended in silence. Maybe I thought I was being noble. Maybe I thought love meant letting go if it made the other person happy. Or maybe I was just a coward. The night I finally realized she had chosen him was the night I stopped going to the park. It was a Friday. I had texted her, asking if she wanted to meet. She replied after 2 hours, "Hey, can we skip today? Raj and I are going for a concert. We'll tell you all about it tomorrow." Smiley face. That smiley at the end felt like a knife. I didn't reply. I didn't cry either. I just sat on my bed, staring at the wall, wondering how love can slip away so silently, like air leaking from a balloon you didn't even know had a hole. Days turned into weeks. They became inseparable. Our messages became shorter. Our calls became rare. And soon, even our silence felt different, heavier, colder, final. But the hardest part wasn't watching them fall in love. The hardest part was realizing that she never even knew I was in love with her. She married my brother, and I never said a word. There's a kind of silence that wraps around you so tightly, even your own breath feels too loud. That's what my world became after that night. I didn't meet Anya the next day. I didn't answer her messages. She asked me once if I was okay, and I told her I was just busy with some work. She believed me. Or maybe she wanted to. Raj was glowing. I had never seen him this happy before. He would talk about her casually, like it wasn't a big deal, like love was just another thing that happened. He didn't know what she meant to me. And that was the strange part. I couldn't blame him. How could he know? I had hidden everything so carefully. I had locked it all up behind quiet gestures and unsaid feelings. One evening, my mother mentioned that Raj was thinking about marriage. My heart skipped. She said it like she was announcing good news. Maybe for her, it was. Maybe for everyone, it was. That night, I stood in front of the mirror for a long time. I looked at my own reflection like I was searching for answers. I kept thinking, what if I had told her earlier? What if I had just said, Anya, I love you? Would it have changed anything? Or was I always meant to lose? Some people say that everything happens for a reason. But sometimes, life just happens. Without reason. Without justice. Without mercy. The wedding preparations began slowly. At first, it was just small talks, guest lists, venues, dates. Then it turned into shopping, decorations, and family meetings. Our house buzzed with excitement. My mother brought out old jewelry. My father made 100 phone calls a day. Relatives started pouring in. And I became the silent helper. The brother of the groom. The one who smiled in photos and lifted boxes and gave suggestions about flowers and food. I was part of every celebration, every laugh, every memory, except the one I wanted to be in. Anya looked beautiful every time I saw her. Radiant, glowing, like happiness had kissed her forehead. She laughed easily, held Raj's hand without hesitation, called my parents mom and dad like she had always belonged. But every time she looked at me, there was a tiny pause. Not long. Just enough. Like some part of her sensed something she couldn't name. She'd blink quickly and look away. And I'd act like I didn't notice. One day, a week before the wedding, I found her alone in the backyard. She was sitting on the swing, slowly rocking, her eyes distant. I hesitated, then walked toward her. She looked up and smiled. Hey, you've been quiet lately. I forced a smile. Just tired, I guess. Lots going on. She nodded. It's all happening so fast. There was a pause, soft, delicate. I used to come here with you, she said, looking around. We used to talk about nothing and everything. You were always so easy to talk to. That line, it broke me in places I didn't know existed. Because that was the moment. That was the opening. I could have said something. I could have looked into her eyes and said the words I had carried for years. But instead, I said, Raj is lucky to have you. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Sometimes I wonder, did she ever feel it? Did she ever lie awake and think, what if he had spoken? Or was I always just a kind friend in her eyes? The wedding day arrived like a storm in slow motion. I wore a sherwani that didn't feel like mine. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw someone pretending. I walked around the venue, helping people find their seats, making sure the lights were right, smiling at guests. When she walked in, dressed in red and gold, the world stopped for a second. Everyone turned to look. She looked like poetry written in silk. My heart ached with a strange pride and unbearable sorrow all at once. She didn't see me at first. She was busy smiling at relatives, adjusting her dupatta, holding on to the edge of her lehenga. Then our eyes met. Just for a moment. And that moment, I'll carry it with me till my last breath. She didn't smile. She didn't look away either. She just looked at me like she wanted to say something, but words had dried up. I nodded. She blinked. And just like that, the moment passed. The wedding went on. Vows were spoken. Garlands exchanged. Fire crackled. Cheers rose. And I clapped along with everyone else, even though every clap felt like a tear falling inside. After the ceremony, I went up to her. She was standing alone, adjusting her jewelry. I said quietly, "Be happy." She looked at me. Her eyes were moist. "You too." I walked away before she could see the pain behind my smile. The next few days were a blur. The house emptied. The relatives left. My parents went to visit family for a few days. Raj and Anya moved to a new flat. And I was left behind with silence, memories, and 1,000 questions that had no answers. I didn't visit them for a while. I made excuses. Work, tiredness, deadlines. The truth was, I wasn't ready. I couldn't sit across from them and pretend everything was normal. But one day, Anya called. "Please come over," she said. "Just for tea." "It's been weeks." I agreed. I don't know why. Maybe I missed her voice. Maybe I wanted closure. Or maybe I just wanted to see if I could still look at her and survive. Their home was warm, beautifully decorated. She had added little touches, plants in the corners, fairy lights near the window, books stacked neatly on shelves. She welcomed me like an old friend, poured me tea, offered snacks. Raj wasn't home. We sat across from each other, and for a few minutes, we talked like old times. About work, life, weather. Then, the conversation dipped. "I wanted to ask you something," she said, softly. I looked up. "Did you ever feel something more between us?" Her voice trembled just a little. My breath caught. For a moment, I thought of lying. I thought of saying no, of keeping the silence alive. But then I said yes. She didn't look shocked. She looked sad. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" she asked. "Because you smiled at him the way I always hoped you'd smile at me." She looked away. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know. I know. Silence again. Not heavy. Just honest. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm not," I said. "You made me feel something real, even if it broke me." She reached out and held my hand for a second. Not with love, not with guilt, just a quiet understanding. And sometimes that's enough. When I left her house that day, something inside me had changed. Not healed. Not yet. But changed. I didn't stop loving her. I just stopped waiting. And maybe, just maybe, that was the first step toward letting go. After that day, something inside me softened. Not completely. Pain doesn't just dissolve because of one honest conversation. But a layer had peeled away. The bitterness, the confusion, the constant loop of what if, they didn't haunt me with the same sharpness anymore. It was still there, of course. The sadness, the ache, the reminders. But they had shifted from being unbearable to something more familiar, like an old scar that stings when the weather changes. I didn't avoid Anya and Raj anymore, but I also didn't seek them out. I visited once in a while. I talked to Raj about work, sports, movies. I talked to Anya about books, life, and sometimes just silence. We didn't pretend the past didn't exist, but we didn't drag it into the present either. It stayed where it belonged, behind us, wrapped in quiet understanding. There were still moments when it hurt. Like when I saw them walking together, laughing at something only they understood. Or when she absent-mindedly adjusted the collar of Raj's shirt, the way I once imagined she would for me. Or when Raj placed his hand gently on her back as they crossed a street, like love lived in his fingers and didn't even need words. And yet, even in those moments, something had changed. I had stopped seeing her as someone I lost. I started seeing myself as someone who had felt deeply and survived. There's a strange kind of growth that happens when you sit quietly with pain instead of running from it. When you let it pass through you like rain, knowing that it won't drown you, only wash you clean, slowly, drop by drop. I began doing small things for myself. I started reading again. Real books. Not just flipping pages, but actually getting lost in stories. Stories where people found healing in unexpected places. I went back to that little tea shop where Anya and I used to sit. Alone this time. I ordered the same ginger chai she always liked. I sat by the window and just watched life go by. Strangers walking, kids laughing, old couples holding hands. The world hadn't stopped. It had just paused for a while, for me. And now, it was moving again. One day, I met someone new. Her name was Kyra. She worked at the local library. I bumped into her while looking for a book on forgotten Indian poets. She noticed the book in my hand and said, "You know, no one ever borrows that one. It's beautiful but quiet, just like the poet himself." We talked for an hour that day. About words, silence, music, and the loneliness of city life. She wasn't like Anya. She didn't laugh easily, but when she did, it felt like a reward. She didn't fill the silence with small talk. She let it breathe. She didn't ask too many questions, and maybe that's what made me want to answer her anyway. We started meeting at the library, then outside it, then in the park, then in places I used to avoid because they reminded me of someone else. But with Kyra, they didn't anymore. They became new again. One evening, she asked me, "Have you ever loved someone deeply?" I looked at her and said, "Yes. Once." She didn't ask for details. She didn't need to. She just smiled and said, "Me too." It was enough. With her, I didn't feel like I had to be perfect. I didn't have to hide the parts of me that still hurt. I could tell her about my bad days, my quiet moods, my fear of repeating old mistakes. And she didn't try to fix me. She just stayed. Sometimes that's all you need, someone who stays, even when your heart is still figuring out how to heal. Months passed. Seasons changed. Anya and I still met, mostly in group gatherings, family events, birthdays. She'd always ask about my life. I'd always say, "It's peaceful." And she'd smile, the kind of smile that says more than words. Raj and I had become closer again. Maybe because I had finally let go. Or maybe because we both knew that love can divide silently if you're not careful, and we didn't want that to happen. He once said, "I don't know what I did to deserve someone like her." And I replied, "Just love her like she deserves." He nodded, unaware of how much that sentence had cost me, and how freely I gave it anyway. Then one evening, it happened. I was at a bookstore when I saw Anya standing in the same aisle. She was alone, holding the book I had once recommended years ago, a thin paperback with a yellow cover and worn-out edges. She didn't see me at first. She was flipping through pages, her fingers slowly tracing the words. I walked up and said softly, "Still reading poetry?" She turned, surprised. Then smiled. "Always." We stood there for a moment, the weight of everything we never said quietly standing between us. "How are you?" she asked. "I'm okay," I said. "Better than I've been in a long time." She nodded. "I'm glad." Then, after a pause, she said, "I read your article last month. The one about unspoken emotions." My breath caught. I had written it for a local magazine. It was about silence, about things we never say but carry forever. I didn't know she had read it. "It felt real," she said. "Like you were speaking directly to someone." "Maybe I was," I replied. She looked at me, eyes soft. "I hope she heard it." "I think she did," I whispered. There was nothing more to say. And yet, everything had been said. We smiled. She walked away. And this time, I didn't feel empty. I went home that night and called Kyra. I asked her if she wanted to go for a walk. She said yes. And as we walked under the streetlights, her hand brushing against mine, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. One evening, we were sitting at our favorite spot near the lake, sipping tea from paper cups. The sky was fading into soft oranges and grays, the air warm and still. She looked at me and said, "Do you think people ever fully move on from their first heartbreak?" I smiled. No, I don't think we're meant to. I think we carry it with us, like an old song we don't play often but still remember every word of. She nodded slowly, her eyes on the water. Does it scare you? It used to, I said. Now it just reminds me how deeply I can feel. I didn't tell her everything, but I didn't hide anything either. And maybe that was the difference. With Anya, I had loved in silence. With Kyra, I loved in truth. A few months later, Raj and Anya invited us over for dinner. It was the first time we'd all be together like that. Kyra was nervous, but I told her she had nothing to worry about. And she didn't. That night, everything was natural. Raj and I joked like we used to. Anya and Kyra spoke about books and recipes. There was laughter, clinking plates, shared memories. No shadows. No awkward pauses. Just four people who had grown in different directions and somehow found peace in the same room. At one point during dinner, Raj stood up and raised a toast. He thanked everyone, smiled at Anya, then turned to me. He said, and to my brother, who's always been the quiet strength in this family. I probably don't say it enough, but I admire you more than you know. I smiled, raising my glass, saying nothing. But inside, something quietly healed. Later that night, as we were leaving, Anya walked me to the door. Just the two of us. She said softly, "She suits you. I can see it in the way you look at her." "She makes me feel calm," I replied. She nodded. "You deserve that." There was a pause. A soft, respectful silence. Then she added, "I sometimes wonder how things might have been if you had spoken sooner." I looked at her, not with longing, not with regret, but with gratitude. "I think about that too," I said. "But I also think, maybe this was always meant to be. Maybe we weren't the love story, we were the lesson." She smiled, sad, kind, and beautiful in a way only old memories can be. Then she reached out and gently squeezed my hand. "Thank you," she said, "for loving me, even when I didn't know it." And I replied, "Thank you for letting me go, even when you didn't know I needed it." That was the last real conversation we ever had. Life moved on, like it always does. Raj and Anya built their world. Kyra and I built ours. And I learned that healing doesn't always come in big moments. Sometimes, it's in the way you stop checking your phone at midnight. Or in the way a certain song stops hurting. Or in how you can finally walk past a place without looking back. Years passed. Kyra and I got married in a quiet ceremony by the sea. No grand speeches, no big stage, just close friends, family, and a sky full of soft clouds. Raj was there, standing beside me as my best man. Anya sat beside Kyra, holding her hand when she looked nervous. And I stood there, looking at the woman I had chosen, the woman who had chosen me back, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Wholeness. After the vows, while everyone was busy taking pictures, I stood by the railing and looked at the waves. They crashed, they pulled back, they came again. Relentless. constant, just like time. Anya came up beside me, holding her sandals in one hand, the hem of her dress in the other. She said, "You look happy." I smiled. "I am." She looked at the ocean and said, "So am I." And in that moment, there was nothing left to fix. Nothing left to say. Just two people standing in the breeze, carrying their pasts with peace instead of pain. She married my brother instead of me. And for a long time, I thought that would break me. But now I know, some things aren't meant to be yours forever. They're just meant to help you become who you're meant to be. And sometimes, love doesn't come to stay. It comes to prepare you for the love that will. So no, I didn't get the girl I once dreamed of. But I got something better. I got freedom. I got closure. I got the quiet joy of having loved deeply and lost gracefully. And most of all, I got the chance to start again with someone who saw me not as an option, not as a shadow, not as a secret, but as her choice. And this time, I didn't let love pass by in silence.